One Hell of a Team by Nyan Sangetsu, Chapter 12, Denying Death. Denial is a powerful thing. When you think about it, everyone deals with it sooner or later. We deny ourselves pain, deny ourselves hatred. Sometimes we even deny love. Denying death. Pyrrha didn't know what to do. She simply did not know. Her mind was all jumble, her thoughts hopelessly tangled, her feelings coiled in tight red knots. Things had been bad enough when Naruto was saddened over Minato's death, then angry, but this went well beyond the pale. He wasn't raging or shouting or drinking or even depressed by the news anymore. He'd gone into full denial. It hurt to see him like this, but it hurt even more to know that a part of her almost preferred it, because at least he was smiling now. "Dad's not dead," he kept saying whenever she or anyone tried to broach the subject with him. "He can't be. He'll come back. This is all part of his plan. You'll see." It was driving her mad. How could she calm him? How could she soothe the fiery flames of his heart? Pyrrha knew there must be a way, but to find it, she had to. She must. He wouldn't listen to anyone else, not Yang, and certainly not Weiss, nor Ruby, or even the Malachites. There had to be a way to crack that outer shell of his. If there was, she'd yet to find it. Nearly a week had passed since he descended into this phase of his, with no end in sight. She flung herself down onto her bed with a pensive sigh. Someone answered. "For the love of, just bang him again or something." And Pyrrha's head snapped up. "Yang, no. Yang, yes." A familiar pair of lively lilac eyes glared at her from opposite bunk, framed by an impish grin. "Look, the two of you are clearly overthinking things here. Bonk him, bang him, whatever floats your boat. Helps get the bad stuff right out. Works like a charm for me." And her hands flew up seemingly of their own volition and sealed over her mouth. Weiss poked her head down from the bunk above and glared her way. "You and whom?" Yang's visage went paler than snowfall. "Nothing, you didn't hear shit." Pyrrha hid the ghost of a smile in one hand. "You clearly said, 'Nope, I didn't say nothing.'" "Stubborn girl," Weiss sighed before fixing her with a pensive look. "Xiaolong's not-so-secret parameter aside, the two of you have been together for quite some time, no?" A glum nod on her part. "We have. Naruto and I knew one another long before his father founded the Leaf Gym." Yang dove on the topic like a drowning woman would a life raft. "Best damn gym ever. Maybe we could head down there again this weekend." Weiss glared icy daggers her way. "Xiaolong?" "Yeah, Weissicle?" "Hush. Hushing." Pyrrha couldn't quite strangle the grinning giggle that escaped her lips at their antics. It was so easy to forget that she wasn't alone in this. Not anymore. Yang and Weiss were her teammates too. After all, they might have rubbed off one another, but they were just as concerned for Naruto's well-being as she. It humbled her. Weiss pushed the peripheral envelope an extra inch. "Had you tried talking to him?" "I've tried that." You clearly haven't done it properly, if he's still being this pig-headed." She huffed and tossed her ponytail over one shoulder. "Corner him somewhere, fight him if you have to, wear him down until he can't get away, and then have it out with him." "Fight Naruto." Pyrrha's blood sang at the thought, an explosive little thrill that had quaked her pulse and her rubbing her thighs together atop the bed. It had been some time since they'd gone at one another for real. Perhaps. Where was the harm? Leave it to Weiss to attack the situation with overwhelming logic. Maybe that was what she needed here. Logic. Beat him down with cold logic, then turn on the passion to burn his anger away. It sounded silly, cliche even, but it was the only idea she had. Even a bad plan was better than no plan at all. "All right, I'll talk to him." "Good." Weiss nodded sagely. "Then bang him." Yang hooted and fell clear off her bed, legs kicking in the air. Pyrrha choked on her own air, gagged, managed to swallow somehow. Only then did she squeak, "Weiss!" "But not here in the dorm." The Shnee continued unabated, heedless to her incredibly red face and Yang's howl of laughter. "Preferably someplace quiet. It's rather late after all, and we need our beauty sleep." And Pyrrha leaped to her feet. "Weiss! Maybe the rooftop. I believe he's up there now." "Weiss!" Pyrrha's retreat became a full-blown rout. Her team's laughter chased her out their dorm and down the hall. Naruto's world had dropped out from under him. In the span of a few short weeks, it felt like he'd come undone at the seams, been torn asunder, then stitched back together the wrong way. He knew he hadn't lost everything. Hell, he still had plenty to live for. Pyrrha, Yang, Weiss, Ruby, and the rest, to say nothing of his uncles and aunts. One mustn't forget Jiraiya either. Hope was not yet lost. But Dad, the idea, the very notion that he'd just thrown his life away out of the blue, it didn't sit right with him. Minato wouldn't run off and die like that. He wasn't stupid. That was strong, invincible, unbeatable. Sure, his health wasn't the best these days with that illness of his, and maybe he wasn't as lively as he used to be. But still, silence was his only solace. So long as he denied it, so long as he refused to believe, there was hope, no matter what others might think. He'd come up here to the rooftops to get away from it all, from his own thoughts and doubts. The night air was cool against his skin, the wind a gentle lull through his ragged hair. It didn't bring him much peace, but he'd take what he could get these days, while he could get it. His sixth sense perked up. A door opened behind him. Footsteps echoed therein, shoes crunching across gravel. He needn't look to know who it was. Their presence was appreciated, but not unaccepted. "Did you need something, Ren?" Ruby's teammate didn't approach. They'd never been close enough for that. It didn't stop them from trying. Bless their simple soul. "I know what it's like to lose a father. If you want to talk. I appreciate the gesture, but..." He shook his head. "Not now, Ren. It's fine. He's fine. Has to be. Perhaps you should consider the possibility that..." "No." He bit out the word, then calmed himself. "No." A shake of the head. "You don't know my dad. He's probably gone underground somewhere. Trust me, he wouldn't go out like this." Behind them, the door opened anew. More footsteps. Ren chortled softly. "It seems you have company. I'll let you be." He heard Ruby's teammate walk away, but his sixth sense still insisted someone was there. Who? He could only think of 3 persons who could willingly seek him out at this hour. One was Ruby, and she was absolutely, utterly incapable of standing still for this long. The other was Yang, and she would have said something by now, which left. Against his better judgment, he turned to face the newcomer. Errors were made. Pyrrha. She had a strange look on her face. Why was she wearing her weapons and her armor? "What are you doing up here?" She didn't answer. He climbed to his feet, not liking the look in her eyes. "Oi, say something." Gloved hands grabbed his jacket, dragged him forward into her. Her lips met his, and she kissed him roughly, ruthlessly plundering his mouth with her own, harsher than usual, an almost frantic desperation to it that had her tangling her hands in his hair. It concerned and excited him in equal measure. He yielded to her happily, only for her to dance backwards when he tried to grab her hips. She slipped through his fingers with a shake of the head, plucked up her sword and shield from her back, and took up a stance. "Fight me." "Huh?" Laughter burst out of him, and she didn't budge. Naruto balked. "Wait, you're serious?" Pyrrha, I don't think that's good. His face hurt. Why the hell did his face hurt? Blinking, he touched a hand to his aching nose. It came away bloody red. Well, her shield had blood on it. His blood. He hadn't even seen her move. Was he that unfocused? "Sorry, not sorry." His partner lowered her shield, wearing a fierce smile. "Wasn't asking. Fight me, or I'll beat you into the ground." He twitched. "Leave." "Nope. Damn it, now she was mimicking Ruby again. "You'll have to beat me or for that to happen." "Now wait just a... Ah!" She clocked him again, turning his words to an irritated growl. His head snapped to the side. "Stop!" Blue eyes flashed red. "You don't want this fight?" "Oh, I do." She slid her shield down over her wrist and struck again, folding him over a strong fist. "And so do you. Get up. I'm not stopping until I see the real you. We're going to get this, all of this." She grabbed at him when he tried to pull away. "Out of your system. Here and now. Tonight." "No." Naruto growled and clutched at his stomach. Another blow, rocking him on his heels. "Par, I said no. We're not doing this. I'm not going to fight you or take my anger out on..." Thunk! His head snapped back. She laughed at him, sparking his anger. "Wrong answer." 1 punch, 2, 3. He caught the 4th, twisting her fist in his hand. "I warned you." Green eyes sparked with mirth. Had he just walked into her trap? Too late to do anything about it now. Pyrrha lunged at him. "Finally!" Preview. "If you take this power, Miss Nikos, you could better protect him." Her eyes flashed. "Do I look like I need your power?" "Yes." Osmond's reply floored her. "You do." "I don't want it. All I ask is that you hear me out." End of chapter 12. One Hell of a Team by Neon Sangetsu. Chapter 13. Birds and Burdens. "Fine, you want an answer, Pyrrha? I'm lost. There, I said it. I've always been lost. Do you understand now? From the moment we met, I was already lost." Birds and Burdens. Naruto was still holding back. The realization somewhat soured Pyrrha's excitement, somewhat as she fought for her life, cast a pale on what should have otherwise been a glorious fight between the two of them. It was her own fault, really. She'd come into this battle trying to make him angry, trying to evoke a response, snap him out of this funk, and she had, in a sense, but even with his anger roused, he yet limited himself, restrained himself. Even now, he refused to fight her as an equal, and the worst part of it all, he was still beating her into the ground. Every move was a blur, and she barely countered. Each block rattled her bones, and every time he landed a blow, she felt her scream. She had been with him for years now, trained with him throughout it all, and it was nearly all she could do to keep up. If it weren't for her semblance, he would have knocked her out long ago and been done with it. Naruto didn't have a bit of metal on him tonight. She, however, on the other hand, had seeded her outfit with bits of metal tonight for this very purpose after all. His fist whirled in at her face. She flared her semblance and forced her arm up with speed it shouldn't have possessed. She grinned and kicked out, driving her heel into his ribs, sending him stumbling back. He touched a hand to his side, scowled now. Blue eyes narrowed upon her. He'd figured it out. Of course he had. He was a tactile genius when it came to combat. Polarity, the act of pushing and pulling that metal whichever way she wanted, gave her that much more of an edge in combat, more so now when she could force her limbs to be wherever they needed to be in time. It was a trick she'd prepared especially for him, something she'd never used on anyone else. Against the juggernaut like Naruto, she needed that edge tonight, or he'd flatten her. It was both exhilarating and humbling, and terrifying. It was far too late to do anything about it. The die was cast, the word said, and nothing could take them back. She could only weather the storm of Naruto's anger and fight for her life. He was absolutely furious with her, not the murderous sort. Pyrrha knew she couldn't handle him when he truly went berserk, but the cold kind. He'd gone well past fire and straight into ice. His mind ran cold, just as hers burned hot. She could see it in his eyes, feel it in the ruthless way he dismantled her at every turn, parried, riposted, and beat her down into the dirt. His skull kissed the ground. Aura flashed or flared now as she rolled away from a kick that it would have surely knocked her out and given her a whiplash besides. If only she had more power. The thought shouldn't have bothered her, but it did. Knowing how far she had yet to go, she knew she was twice, if not thrice as strong now as she would have been without him pushing her forward. She had surpassed her limits time and time again, yet here and now, when he let loose like this, it reminded her just how large the gap between them remained. How could she close it? Milo whisked in at Naruto's head, her sword seeking his chin, and when he parried that, she smashed the aqua into his face. Naruto tanked it, and the shield buckled with a squeal of metal. No missing a beat. She slung her shield onto her back and swiped her sword to its spear form, driving him back in a storm of blows. He weaved between them all, a dancer on stage. Not a single strike touched him. He didn't mock her, didn't speak, or so much as say a word. When his counterattack finally came, Pyrrha barely got her guard up in time. His fist slammed into the butt of her spear and sent her skidding away. Her feet dug in, preventing her from flying clean off the rooftop, but only just. She raised her spear and grinned at him over it. "That your best?" "Enough," he spoke at last. "This is pointless, and you know it. Stop trying to make me..." Clang. "Angry," he finished with a snarl, catching her spear in his hand. "I mean it." She bashed her forehead against his, or crackled. He snarled and smashed the knee at her stomach, only for her to meet it with one of her own. The world dissolved into mindless violence once more. This wasn't a fight. It was a waltz, a savage rhythm that saw them blurring across the rooftop, their full physical potential on display. Not a single movement wasted. Wasn't even a fair one at that. He fought on unarmed while she had her sword and shield to hide behind. If he'd whipped out his chakra or clones, she knew she'd be in for a beating. But he never did. Even in his icy rage, he restrained himself. Pyrrha wasn't sure if she loved or hated him for that. Her anger came to her as his knee rocketed into her stomach. Breath burst from her lungs as she doubled over with a startled gasp. For everyone else, it would have meant certain defeat, but she'd been taught to control her breathing and righted herself up quickly. Naruto slugged her in the chest for it. Ow! This time the gasp was a pained one as she recoiled. "Right in the boob? Really?" A spark of concern broke through his anger. "Sorry, Pyrrha." Her temper sparked. No more apologies. She was so sick of that word. Sick of it. "Stop that!" She hollered and kicked him in the groin. He grunted in pain, stance wavering for a moment. She took full advantage, decking him with her lance. Once, twice, she just missed. On the third sweep, Naruto drove flat to the floor, allowing her javelin to whistle over his head. In the same instant, he swept her legs and kicked her into the air. Her world went sideways. Down became up, and up became down as she rocketed upwards. He reappeared behind her there, right fist swinging back before she could hope to touch the safety of the ground. Well, this isn't grand at all. Pyrrha knew this move, the primary lotus, just as she knew what came next, but she had no real way to dodge it in the air. She turtled up behind her shield, flared her semblance, and prayed for the best. Wasn't enough, not by a long shot. Crunch. Naruto's punch ripped Pyrrha's clean off the rooftop, slapped her out of the sky, and filled her ears with so much wind. She couldn't see where she was headed anymore. He'd hit her that hard, that fast. Long locks lashed at her face, and belatedly she realized his attack had ruined her ponytail. A proper huntress would have whined and cried about getting their hair dirty. Pyrrha simply sighed, tucked herself into a ball, flared her aura, and there, by the brother god's good grace, she landed in a tumble and bounded up to her feet with only a bit of aura damage. Green eyes widened as she realized where she'd crashed down. Naruto hadn't simply slapped her off the rooftop. He'd knocked her clear into Beacon's courtyard, near the fountain at the main entrance at the cliffs. This was the very place they'd been flown in by the airship not so long ago. But where was? A shadow fell over Pyrrha. Against her better judgment, she dared to look up towards it. She saw Naruto above, silhouetted against the broken moon, one leg raised high. Her beloved fell upon her like a shooting star, a very angry star. A dozen voices fired in her head, one chief among them. Move, move, move! Pyrrha kicked off the ground and flung herself aside with a yelp. Just as well she did too, because Naruto's axe kick ruptured the ground, creating a chasm between the earth and stone. The dirt wasn't simply destroyed, it burst, kicking up a growing geyser to blind her. She felt some of the cliffside crumbling away into the sea and gulped a little. Forget about being knocked out. If she'd been hit by that, she'd have a broken, well, everything. Do you understand now? Naruto ripped his foot from the dirt and glared up at her from the crater he'd made. You can't win. Stop trying to piss me off. She really should. He might kill her if this continued. And yet, nothing would change if she gave up, would it? He'd go back to being in denial, hiding his pain behind a smile. She couldn't bear the thought. She'd do whatever it took to save him from that pain, even if it meant she had to suffer a bit of it herself. Better to get all of his frustrations out here and now, burn up all that negativity and start anew. But how? Naruto absolutely twitched. What was that? Pyrrha blinked, touched a hand to her lips. She said that, hadn't she? Well, in for Leon, as they say. I said you're being a wuss. She planted a fist on her hip, projecting bravado she didn't truly feel. Stop being a pansy about this. Man up and tell me how you really feel. Naruto exhaled slowly, a long shivering breath. Don't call me that, Pyrrha. What, a wuss? She forced herself to smile. Fine, you're not a wuss. You're being a pussy. Take your balls out of your purse and fight. Naruto didn't budge. All for nothing then. Hopefully he'd forgive her. She tilted her head and gave him the push he needed. Then I guess Minato was right about you. You really can't think for yourself. Naruto absolutely hissed. She dodged back the moment he did. It saved her life. She didn't see Naruto move, but she certainly felt what followed. An uppercut caught her chin and sent her flying through the air, arse over elbow. She rocketed back into Beacon, crashed through one wall, another now, and a third still. Finally, she landed flat on her back, blinking black spots from her vision. She propped herself up on her elbows and blew a strand of scarlet hair from her face. Someone yelped above her. Pyrrha? Was that? And she blinked black spots away from her eyes and craned her neck where she lay. Oh, hello, John. She mustered a bleary grin. I'm sorry, I'm not interrupting, am I? She most certainly was, if Neil's relative state of undress was anything to go by. Also, she was sitting on Zed Blonde's chest and glaring absolutely daggers at her. Pyrrha felt the last bit was worth nothing. Right. Those two were together, weren't they? And she had almost forgotten. And was that Melanie and Milta over there? Maybe someday she'd ask how that happened. A crimson claw burst out of the smoke and grabbed her by the ankle. She gulped. Don't mind us, ladies. You too, John. Naruto's voice was a low growl. We're just working out some relationship issues. His piece said. He whipped her back outside into the moonlight. All hell broke loose. You want to talk about my feelings? A furious snarl filled Pyrrha's ear as she struck the ground shoulder first. Fine, have it your way. He was on her in an instant later, raining down punches against her shield. It was all she could do to keep her arm steady and ward him off. Let's talk about my feelings. All my life I looked up to my dad, lived by his example. His fist thundered past her face, shaving away strands of scarlet. When she didn't quite dodge in time, she ducked back and he gave chase, swinging like a madman, all pretense of strategy lost. What he would say, what he would do, what was the right thing, all of it. He wailed on her and she took it, trusting in her shield to hold fast. I thought I knew who I was meant to be, but now he's gone and I can't. He reared back and punched down at her feet, creating the earth as he latched her away. I'm lost without him. Pain pulsed through Pyrrha's left leg. She grit her teeth against it. Progress was worth a little pain. That's all right. She staggered upright, whipped a bit of blood from her mouth, and smiled at him. We can be lost together. I'll protect you. High above them, the clouds parted, and the light of a shattered moon fell upon them. It didn't reach Naruto. He stood in the shadow still, head bowed, shoulders quivering. I don't want to be protected. The words escaped him in a hoarse croak of a rasp, and in that instant Pyrrha saw it, a spark of scarlet light rising from his stomach. I want vengeance. I want to find whoever made that vanish and tear them apart. I'll wring their neck, tear out their eyes, smash in their skull. Here at last he raised his gaze. His eyes were blue no longer. They'd gone slitted, scarlet. His gaze had become that of a beast. Dread dawned with it. No. No chakra cloak. Not here. Beacon wasn't ready for that level of power. Naruto, wait! Do you even know what it's like, Pyrrha? His voice warped as he spoke, taking on a darker cadence that chilled her blood. To think you know who you are, only to realize your life is a lie. A single crimson tail of dark red light slithered into existence behind him. No, how could you? I helped you. I saved you. I plucked you out of that mess in Mistral, and you think you know me? That I want to be protected? Saved? This was getting out of hand. That's not what I meant. A sharp crack of sound was her only warning. Then he stood before her. Naruto's forehead touched hers, and scarlet chakra smoldered against her aura, smoke spitting between them. You know nothing, Pyrrha Nikos. Don't panic. She had to calm him down quickly. I know enough. Trusting in her faltering aura to hold, she stepped forward and flung her arms around his neck, drew him close now, heedless of her plummeting strength. Naruto stiffened. What are you doing? I know that will kill them, she whispered in his ear, crooning softly as she held him close. You, me, Yang, and Weiss will kill them all, everyone who took Naruto from us. But before that, I'll get stronger, not to protect you, but to stand beside you. Her hand came up to his chin. To be your equal, I'll become so strong that you'll never need to be afraid again of losing me, yourself, anything at all. But I can't do that if you keep pushing me away. She drew back, holding his back with her other hand, grimacing a little as her gloves began to smolder. Let me in, Naruto. Let me help. Horror was buckling against the fox's chakra. She felt it now, yet she didn't dare let go. Not here, not now. And in return, I'll give you all that I am, my past, my present, my future. He made a strangled noise caught somewhere between a snarl and a sob. You'll die. Maybe not now, but someday. She smiled softly at him. Then I'll haunt you. Remember what I told you? I am yours, and you are mine. His fingers curled around hers. Oddly enough, her words seemed to mollify Naruto. The crimson chakra surrounded him guttered out, dissolving into wisps of red smoke. He slumped in her arm, and she caught him, kneeling against the ground. Tears strained her shoulder. She didn't remark on them. I'm just so angry. That's all right. She'd known he would be. Do you feel better now? His body sagged against hers. I'm tired. Sleep then. She tucked his head into her lap. We can rest here until you feel better. How does that sound? He offered a rusty laugh in return. The teachers are gonna be so pissed. We wrecked Beacon. I say. Right on cue, she heard a most familiar shout. What is the meaning of this? Pyrrha smiled at Naruto, refusing to look away. Sorry, not sorry. She was certainly feeling sorry when Osman called her up to his tower the next morning. You want to see me, sir? Yes, Miss Nikos. Osman took a long drink from his mug. Please, come in. Her gaze flitted above the room, taking note of a scruffy-looking man lingering by the elevator. She assessed him an instant, just as she had been taught. Bright red eyes, dark hair, a silver flask in his hand, unconventional weapon at his back. Huntsman had to be. But why was he here? And why did he remind her of Ruby? If you don't mind me asking, sir, she looked back at the headmaster. Why have you called me here? If it's about last night's fight, well, the less said about that, the better. Dr. Ooblik had slapped them with a month's worth of detentions and dogged team weapon a grade besides. Weiss and Yang weren't terribly happy about the latter. Naruto was still sleeping off last night in the infirmary, and she'd barely had a chance to see him this morning before she'd been hauled up here. Osman beckoned. Take a seat. Reluctantly, she did so. Were they going to be expelled? She hoped not. What is your favorite fairy tale? Pyrrha blinked. Hard. Pardon? Fairy tales, the headmaster prattled on, heedless of her confusion. Stories from your childhood. Surely you must remember some of them. My childhood. Pyrrha blinked at the thought she hadn't had much of one before she met Naruto, before she escaped father. I'd rather not think about that, if it's all the same to you. Ah, yes. Osman at least had the good graces to wince. I'd nearly forgotten. My apologies. Tell me then, have you heard the story of the seasons? Pyrrha recalled it vaguely. The one about the 4 maidens and the old man, yes. Winter, spring, summer, fall. The 4 maidens. The ghost of a smile touched her face. My mother loved that story. She missed Mother. She'd given anything to see her again. Better yet, to get her far, far away from Father. Maybe someday she'd be well enough to live on her own again. The headmaster chuckled softly. Would you believe that story's been around since I was a boy? She quirked a crimson brow his way. Surely you're not that old. He couldn't be, could he? Well, would you believe me if I told you it was true? His response drew renewed scrutiny and suspicion from her. What if I were to tell you there were 4 maidens in this world, beings of tremendous power strong enough to control the very elements themselves? Pyrrha didn't like where this was going, not one bit. Why are you telling me this? The headmaster steeped his fingers. Because I have a story to tell you, Miss Nikos, and one not at all pleasant. Against her better judgment, she listened. Osmond told her the story of a girl named Amber. He told her it all, and at the end of it all, she reeled backwards. If you take this power, Miss Nikos, you could better protect those you care for. Her eyes flashed. Do I look like I need your power? Yes, Osmond's reply floored her. You do. All I ask is that you hear me out. I don't want it. She did, even if she was suspicious as all hell about it. What were the chances? She'd been quietly craving more strength to stand beside Naruto, and just after they fought, she was offered this. The timing was too good to be true, and if it wasn't... This girl, Amber, what happened to her? She is dying, Osmond hung his head. Though her wounds are most assuredly fatal, she managed to cling to the lion's share of her powers despite being attacked. Power, strength she could use to close the gap, the better to keep Naruto safe, and paint a target on her back. If I agree to this, I won't answer to you. She expected anger from him, disappointment at the very least, something, anything. Instead, he smiled. That smile worried her all the more. I should hope not. I drove Amber away. He shook his head, experiencing a bad memory. In my need to protect her, my desire to keep her safe, I indirectly caused the event that led to her doom. That's a lesson well learned, and a mistake I shan't make again. Allow me to be clear, Miss Nikos. His eyes met hers as he stippled his fingers. I will not constrain you in any way. You may come and go as you please. And on the day you graduate, you are welcome to pursue whatever career you wish. I would only ask that you defend Beacon should it ever come under attack. That was all. Miss Nikos, may I be frank? She frowned. I thought you already were. I make no exaggeration when I say you're one of the strongest huntresses in this generation. Up came the mug again for him to drink from again. It did nothing to hide his smile. You could likely give Crow here a run for his money. Huh? The drinking man scoffed. The kid's good, but she's not that good, even if she did have that goody two-shoes Minato teaching her. Pyrrha snapped her fingers. Crow's weapon flew from his sheath and slammed into the ceiling, well out of reach. Hey, she glared at him. Talk poorly about him again, and your flask will join it. Why a little? Her right finger twitched. Crow heaved a sigh. Fine, I'll be good. Cheeky little bird. I learned from the best, Pyrrha preened as she released his blade, and don't think I'm blind to what you really want. From there, she rounded on Osmond, eyes flashing. You don't just want me, you want Naruto. It was easy to see. They were a package deal. You couldn't have one without the other. I admit, he would likely be inclined to help you, as would your friends, but no, my motives here are purely pragmatic. He seemed almost sad to say it. If there were anyone stronger, anyone better suited, anyone else of the proper age, you and I would not be having this conversation. Give it to Good Witch then, she's strong. I cannot. She is too old. Would you rather suggest one of your friends instead? His verbal riposte caught her off balance. Many of them were trained at the Leaf Gym and quite skilled. They might prove suitable should you turn this offer down. Pyrrha's jaw clenched. Osmond had her. He absolutely had her, and they both knew it. Even if she weren't considering the maiden solely for the power boost it offered, she would know to spare Yang and Weiss, if not Ruby and the rest. Taking this strength would make her a target, to be sure, but better her than her friends. She was the strongest among them. Had to be her. Someone else might just die. Can I have time to think on this? You can. Osmond nodded, filled her with relief. His words stole that joy away. I would prefer your answer in the next 3 minutes. That's all. Your little skirmish last night spooked the one seeking this power. A second attempt was made on Amber's life only some hours ago by masked individuals. Professor Port gave his life driving them away. She recalled, and he paused to let the weights of his words sink in. Whether they were true or a lie, she didn't know, and the distinction worried her. Miss Goodwitch and Dr. Ooblik is currently guarding her body, but we have no way of knowing whether there will be a third attempt. Time is of the essence. If we delay any longer, then we risk her power being ripped away right under our noses. Naruto would understand, surely. She'd sworn to become stronger for him, after all. Have you made your decision then? She had. I'll become a maiden, but not your maiden. I suppose the distinction matters. He shrugged and reached across the table. Shake my hand. Pyrrha eyed his open fingers like a acquainted, a viper's ready to bite. It felt like making a deal with the devil. Honestly, must all Minato students be so suspicious? The headmaster must have sensed her concern too, because he heaved a sigh. Be assured, I am not your enemy. I swear to you on my daughter's memory. That too was news to her. You have children? I did. Once upon a time. His smile was small and sad, his eyes distant, lost in some awful memory. I would never use their name in vain. Oh gods, she was actually considering this. If you betray me, I'll kill you. Crow squawked. Hey! Osmond didn't react. He considered her for a long moment. I dare say you would do a better job than most. Shall we? She shook his hand, and there was no spark, no tingle of power, no sapping of her soul, nor a blood oath sworn. Osmond's hand was just that, a hand. She felt silly for fearing it in the first place. Excellent! Osmond hopped to his feet and kicked up his cane under his arm. Come along, then. Pyrrha balked, made incredulous by his sudden declaration. And now? There's no time like the present, don't you think? Naruto woke in his bed with a start. He looked left, right now, frowned. Where'd Pyrrha go? The human soul truly is a strange thing, isn't it? Many said aura was the soul. Perhaps it was. Perhaps it wasn't. Perhaps it was something else entirely, and everyone was horribly mistaken. Pyrrha couldn't claim to know either. Aura was aura. Soul was soul. Nothing more, nothing less. As simple as, and right now, her soul was on fire. Power rushed into the pod, into her, filling her every pore with liquid fire. Pain, pain, pain. It hurt, agony unending, torment unceasing. She'd screamed herself hoarse within the first minute, and still it didn't stop. Aura rushed into her, power not her own, the last dregs of a dying girl with nothing left to lose but her life. She saw things she'd never seen, experienced memories that weren't her own, sights, sounds, and smells, a looming loneliness so power she wanted to weep. Something brushed up against her mind, a faint, tired presence, little more than a feather's brush. And then she heard it, a girl's voice. So, Osmond chose another. You're strong, if nothing else. She grit her teeth to bite back another scream. Who are you? The answer came to her a moment later. He'll use you as he used me, Amber's voice intoned. You've made a fool's bargain. Maybe she had, almost certainly, but it was the only one left for her to make. Pyrrha gritted her teeth and snarled. I am me. No one else. She would not be used. She refused to be someone's tool. She was Pyrrha Nikos. No amount of foreign aura or memories could change that. She clung to her sense of self as her aura topped up and overflowed, using her own memories, her feelings as one might a raft in a storm sea. Faces, feelings, names. She began to chant them under her breath. Naruto, Weiss, Yang. Now the others, muttering them one after the other like a mantra, a prayer to keep herself sane as the sliver of a slain woman's soul fused with hers. That's the way. Remember those names? Amber's voice, or perhaps her ghost, offered one last ragged sigh. Don't die alone, Pyrrha. Live, laugh, love. The haze faded, and with it, the lid creaked open. Pyrrha forced herself to grasp the edge of the pod, using it to hoist herself upright. Osmond was waiting there with a neutral expression and a helping hand. She slapped it aside, refusing to rely on him, and stumbled out to freedom. Gripping her former prison for balance, Goodwitch and Oobleck awaited her only a stone's throw away, their faces carved from stone. No one spoke, no one breathed. She found her voice at last. Did it work? Crow raised his flask high. See for yourself, Red. Pyrrha glimpsed her reflection in the glass lid of the pod. The mirror held her answer. Her eyes burned with green flames. Previous. What did you do? I did what was necessary to protect you. Naruto flung up his arms. By taking on strange powers you know next to nothing about. Because I wanted to. A bit of wind kicked up, scattering their homework across the room. Is that so wrong? She grimaced, touching a hand to her burning eyes. Forgive me, I'm still getting used to this. Yang whistled. Alright, this is just bullshit. How come you get the superpowers? I quite concur, Weiss huffed. Do you even know how to control it? Maybe. Aw, does my little sis have a crush? Yang! Cinder absolutely hissed, the power stolen out from under her. Who had it? Who had taken it from Amber? She'd killed them, skinned them alive. Fighting the White Fang, huh? Sure, why not? Should be fun. Must you persist? Salem raised her hand, idly watching the limb regenerate. Come now, we've been at this for days. Shall we call a truce? No, your body will give out. Her would-be victim chuckled. Will it now? He slapped the seal against her chest, and then there was pain. End of chapter 13.